All right, all right, all right. Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna, and you don't know already. I pray everybody is doing well. I'm just going to check my levels real quick, and then we'll get right into this conversation. All right, all right, all right. I am back. I'm just trying to make sure that I can be heard before I get started. So if you can hear me, please let me know because this is about to be something. I was watching the YouTube in recent times and I came across a lot of information, and two things really caught my eye. More so the historical aspect of what is being questioned, meaning the genealogy of someone being questioned, Kamala Harris, as well as the fact that it's Jamaican genealogy. And if you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Amuna, and you don't know already. This is something that I specialize in, doing Jamaican genealogy, not for the purposes that it's being done for right now, but Jamaican genealogy. And um, yeah, this type of historical narrative. So I found this as an opportunity. What's kind of being postured now on the internet is that Kamala Harris is not Black. I believe Janet Jackson said so in an interview. And, this is the conversation that's going around. So I was like, wow, this is interesting. I really don't have a dog in this fight, but I kind of wanted to know myself because it required, looking into the genealogy, something that I speak of often. So without further ado, let me go ahead and get into this real quick. Let me make sure it's on the YouTube side because what's really going on here? Hold on one second. Let me go over to the YouTube side and make sure everything is good. It should be. Greetings, greetings. You can hear me loud and clear. Excellent. So have you guys come across this discussion on YouTube? The weird thing before I get into it is when I saw people, having this interest in genealogy, but they're also not respecting the records. And I was a little perturbed with that. Like, people are going into people's personal family records and changing them all willy-nilly. And you're like, that's a violation. You know what I mean? I understand people want to know, is she or ain't she? But that's a little bit too far, no? Like, you're literally going to start going in, and just because you heard a YouTube video, you're going to start adjusting people's family records. I mean, there should be limits to what we're willing to do, right? So I guess the question on the table is she Black? Because I heard to the grapevine that she isn't. Now, to me, it really doesn't matter. But again, for the sake of the history, for the sake of the Lev Project, we're about to go in. I saw Candace going in, and my friend was like, yo, genealogy lady, what's good? And I was like, nah, I don't really have any time for this. I'm like, I got to do my homework, but it was calling me. I'm like, come on, because I saw some places that Candace was stumbling, in my humble opinion, by doing this, not because I'm trying to prove something or doing it because I have an ulterior motive. The thing about when you come to these records, if you have something that you're trying to prove, if you already have a hypothesis, if you're already building a theory, the way that, and you don't know the context by which the people that you are talking about lived, then you're going to come to bad conclusions. And that's what I saw. I saw a lot of conclusions that she erroneously arrived at because she doesn't understand the culture. So I'm going to use, and what I used, I started from scratch. Like, I heard what she said, but I put it to the side, right? Because I think it wasn't It wasn't balanced. And so I started from scratch reading Kamala Harris's, Donald J. Harris's account. That's where I said, let me start there. And as you know, if you're new to the channel or not, you know what I mean? We've done this. This is what we do. You understand? We did it for Bob. We did it for Norval. We did it for Marcus. We did it for myself. We're doing it for yourself. So this is something that we do, right? So let's go ahead and get into it now. Let's go ahead and share this video and like this video, because you already know if you like the way I went in on the Bob Marley genealogy, you're definitely going to like this. So share this video and like this video because I am about to go in. All right. I'm about to go in. So buckle your seatbelts. I want to say off the top, one of the things that is easy to dispel off the rip, off the top from what Candace is doing and saying is Donald J. Harris doesn't have a birth certificate. Don't you find that suspicious? Don't you find it suspicious? And again, I'm not a Kamala apologizer. Again, this is for the culture. Jamaica, the records, the Caribbean, the culture. So let me just say that off the bat, because I know this video is probably going to bring in people from all walks of life. This is for the culture. Check the channel. This is what we do. So one correction that I would humbly like to offer the sister is that you will not find on these sites, whether it be ancestry.com, familysearch.com, you will not find the living's birth certificate just out there or willy-nilly. That's something you would have to go to Vital Statistics for, because these sites, A, they stop at a certain period of time, and B, if the person is still living, you're not going to easily access their birth certificate. Did I make myself clear? Therefore, you could put to rest the conspiracy of why you don't see his birth certificate. To my understanding, the man is still alive, and therefore you will not be able to acquire his birth certificate by, trying to tip tap around looking for it like that. The people's birth certificates that you find, they come up to a certain time, especially on, familysearch.org. They come up to a certain time and then it cuts off because somebody has to be back there in the back scanning this stuff in. So you're not just going to have, secondly, so that's the first reason why you're not finding, in my humbled opinion, in my experience, I'm speaking from experience, you are not going to find it. The second thing I would like to say is that just because you do not see them naming the children of the person, welcome to those who just joined us, does not mean children do not exist. Why? Because if they had the children after a certain date, and if those children are still alive, again, you're not going to see them. So no false alarms, no alarms here. There's no conspiracy theory if you do not see, when you're looking for people in this capacity, if you do not see them, especially because they are still alive. Prudimel, welcome to the conversation. So I wanted to preface the conversation with that because I saw some like, don't you find it strange? And I'm like, no, it's not strange. If you really do this work for real, you're not going to find it strange. You're going to realize that there's certain things you need to understand before you go a digging, or at least be willing to accept. The third thing now? The third thing that I would like to say to kind of clear up some misconceptions are that there are a lot of people named the same thing. There are a lot of people in the same parish named the same thing, right? And just because we want a story to be something does not mean that's what it is. And that's the error in what I'm seeing and I'm hearing. I'm seeing and hearing millions of people like, ooh, it's salacious, right? That the person is not quote unquote Black, but we're going to see if I found one or two or three or four or five or six. How many melanated people did I find in this woman's history? And why is this important? Because the motto of Jamaica is out of many, one people. Why? Because the history of the Caribbean, specifically in this case, Jamaica, is that there was a lot of things going on that may not have went over so well in America, but they were getting down like that in Jamaica. The father already came forward in 2019, and he's the one who put everybody on game. So I'm going to now, I said all of those things. I hope if you have any questions, drop it in the box. Again, I'm going to, why are you doing this? I put Tyrese on pause for a second. I'm doing this because A, you're talking about Jamaica. B, people are digging in Caribbean records. C, and they're coming up with all kind of wayward conclusions. So with that said, let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, like and share, because this one is, I took my time on this one. I was like, man, I'm tired, but guess what? Let me just go ahead and bring this one to the people. Let me make sure that you can see. Let me make sure that I can see, because I don't know why my screen is scrunched up. Can you see? Can you see? Let me see here. Let me know. Can you see it? Let me know if you can see me sharing my screen. Oh, well, yes, sir. All right, cool. Yes, you can. All right. All right. Hopefully it's big enough. All right, boom. No, I don't want that one, yeah. I don't want the notes. I don't want the notes. I don't want that one, yeah. Hold on there. I want it full screen. All right. Let me see if this is the better screen here so that you can see it full screen. All right, boom. Perfect. Okay, here we go. Everybody sees it. All right, let's get it. So, Kamala's, I think I misspelled her name. I put an H on the end. Real family history. I thought it had an H on the end. I may be mistaken on that. So I will fix that afterwards. Okay. So we have some pictures here, and that's what has everybody in an uproar. So let's get to it. This is the picture of the great about four great grandfathers. The one that is like, because I heard he was a white man from Europe, from Ireland. And if that's what you heard, the chances are you were right. Okay. Hamilton Brown Sr. Through a little reading and perusing, we found out that his name was Ironhead. I wonder why they called him that. 1776 to 1843. These dates are important. The dates are important. Like I say all the time when we're going through history, dates are important, okay? Because if it don't fit, what did Johnny Cochran say? You must have quit, okay? So we have Irish immigrants to North America. Brown Hamilton, born in 1775 in Compton Atrium, died on 18th of September, 1843. Now, some people will be like, see, they lied. They lied. One said 1776, and the next one said 1775. A little tidbit when you're researching the Caribbean. There are sometimes they record from the actual birth, but there weren't hospitals at that time. So the baptismal sometimes is a few, or the registration is a few months after, oftentimes, the actual birth. And so you may see some variation between the months and the days in which they're recorded and which they are actually born. No alarm bells there, okay? So let's continue. Hamilton Brown, we see it again, September 1843. This would be the great grandfather, the slave owner, the attorney. His great descendant became an attorney, who is Kamala Harris, and he is and was an attorney and also a slave owner in Jamaica. So this is what had a lot of people alarmed, which I find curious. I'm gonna try to stay on topic on this one, but I find that curious for other reasons, but we're gonna continue. So where am I? He departed from County Antrim in Ireland And we see that he was 68 years of age and the founder of Brownstown. So we heard that. You can go on Wikipedia, you can see the reports, you can see people going to Jamaica, and you will hear about him being the founder of Brownstown. Okay, so he had means, he had resources, he had power. He was 22 years one of the representatives for his parish. Okay, so this information, you can find a lot about this information on Jamaican legacy and heritage sites. So you will also see that he was instrumental in importing hundreds of laborers and their families from Ireland to Jamaica. There are still some communities. That's why people say, oh my goodness, are they white Jamaicans? There actually are white, quote, white Jamaicans, and some of which are Irish. Okay. So he was trying to bring in, just like they brought people in from China and people in from India, he was instrumental, according to this, in bringing in people from Ireland to Jamaica. But we're not going to get stuck on Mr. Ironhead. We're going to continue. He's there. So to pretend that he's not in, like, oh my goodness, why didn't they go into this? The father actually went into it. And so it's a reality. You can't go back and change who you came from. It is what it is. You know, some we want to be like, oh, you know, oh my goodness, I can't believe blah, blah, blah. Come on. It's where people have come from. It's life. Let's continue. So this is one of the lists that you will find on Ancestry, one of the slave registry lists, right? And there are many. And in this one, it's 432 enslaved people. So he wasn't over there with one or two. You understand what I'm saying? He had plantations. Okay. So up close here, you will see Hamilton Brown's name, and he's swearing, right? So he's at the notary, and he's swearing. If a Quaker or a solemn affirm, right, to the above, that this list is the list of return, where they were supposed to be, if I'm not mistaken, by 1829, thereabouts, the slave trade is supposed to be done. And they're supposed to be returning the slaves, right? And then England is kind of buying them for reparations, right? Paying the slave owners reparations. So if you follow the story of CARICOM, which is the Caribbean arm for trying to get a restitution for slavery, you will see that when they went to Jamaica, when they went to actually England's like, we ain't got no money for you because we paid the slave owners to set you free. Okay, that's another story for another day. Again, this is another one, just a list. You can't see all the way close up, but this is just a list of Mr. Ironhead here, Hamilton Brown. We're just going to call him senior for the purposes of this conversation. Let me know if you're following along, if I need to go a little bit slower. But we're going to continue. And again, I did a little close up so you can see the notes that were being taken, the name, the color of the person, the age of the person. Were they Creole? Were they African? That means were they mixed? Were they mixed? How did you have so many Creoles? And the remarks of the people. But to go into depth on that, that's something for another day. But I'm just going to continue. Once again, you're seeing again Sam and Caesar and Ned and Robert and all of these people that they were enslaving, runaways since October 1810, son of Solomon. So this is people's ancestors. This is why I find it interesting that we only just care about this one. Did this one person have black in them? But anyway, we'll continue. I'm not going to digress. Anyway, so this is the grave marker that is said, and we found this on the grave. Find a grave, right? This is the grave marker, 1776 to 1843, in the St. Mark's Anglican Church. And this is where he came from. So he literally came from Ireland to Jamaica. Let's continue. And this is, it's going to get juicy. Y'all just wait one good second here. It's going to get juicy. This is the inscription that was on the grave marker. It's basically saying, you know, what he did, okay, which was a lot. So now he had a son, because we're trying to look and follow her family lineage and see what's really going on there, right? So he had a son, Hamilton Brown Jr., okay? And Hamilton is born 1833, and he's said to pass 1918. So also I'm being mindful that I did the research to connect the people, but there's always, space where somebody could come and say, no, that was somebody who lived up the lane. So you have to leave space as we're trying to retroactively kind of put this stuff together, right? So Hamilton Brown Jr. So far, not Hammerhead, Ironhead, he was European, he was Irish. So Hamilton Brown Jr., again, 1833 to 1918, buried similar to where his father is buried, and this would have been his grave marker. We're moving along here. Mary Melvina Brown, 1839 to 1892. Amuna, who's Mary? Okay, we about to find out. According to the narrative, Mary Melvina is the wife, or was the wife, of Hamilton Brown Jr. That's what it said. But this is what I'm talking about people messing with the records, is that people are going in and messing with the records. I don't like messing with the parts that you can edit, not the actual physical records, but the part that you can edit. We need to be a little bit more respectful of people's history, because it's not just one person on this page, right? So anyway, Mary Melvina Brown, if we look closer here, we will see that on line 38, Mary Melvina Brown is with Hamilton Brown Jr., who is a planter. So if we're to assume that this is the same Hamilton Brown who was the son of Ironhead, then we shall proceed, right? So this particular Mary Melvina and Hamilton Brown Jr. had four children, three confirmed, and then you see that they're associating Alfred with them as well. So it would be the years of 1875, Edward Hamilton, 1877, Mabel Malvina, 1879. And you see this often, that in my studies, you will see the same name flipped forward and backwards, and you're going to see the same name reoccur. They may change the middle name, they may transpose it, but this is something to keep in mind. It's not an accident. This is actually what they were doing. Okay. So let's continue here, because we're still like, Amuna, what does this have to do with anything? People said they're looking for the ethnicity. Let me know if I can still be heard. Let me know if I can still be heard. They say that they're looking for the ethnicity. I'm not sure how much they're looking for it, but nonetheless, that's what I heard, right? So let me just make sure I can still be heard as I continue here. All right, I can still be heard. So let's continue. So we have the baptismal paper. Some of the key papers that you're going to get: marriage. I always say this for everybody that I tell about how to do your own history. Marriage papers. You're going to get burial papers. You're going to get birth certificates. You're going to get things of that nature, especially for this time. Now, as you go forward, you can tell this was an older paper, because as you go forward, they change the way they input the paperwork in, right? So this is from 1845, it is saying, okay? And here there's a Gilbert Charles Clement. Remember, I found a Gilbert Charles Clement Brown, 1875, right? This is 1875. Sorry, I think I said 45. It's 7. There's a little fancy 7 right there. But we have him being born on January, right? And then we have that he's a male. And you see in the column that it says complexion, you see white, okay? So at this time, they were doing that. White, legitimate, because they were going into whether or not the person was legitimate or illegitimate, okay? And so we see legitimate there. I took the liberty to highlight it for your discretion. All right. And then it says, when was the person baptized? And then we see Hamilton Brown, name of the father. All right. And then in the name of the mother, you see Mary Melvina Brown. And we see shopkeeper as the father. So one place we may see that the father is a planter. Another place we see that the father is a shopkeeper. Was he a shopkeeper and a planter? It's a possibility. But we're going to continue, because this is all contingent upon, all of the information that's linking together, right? Again, You may have other outliers that just because you search something once or twice, it may not come up because, especially in the Caribbean, the name you think it is not the name. People had multiple names, just to let you know. But let's continue. So it doesn't mean that somebody was, oh my goodness, this person is lying. It just means that's the culture. That was the culture of the time. So this is another baptismal paper. And we also see for Hamilton Brown and Mary Malvina Brown, formerly Brown. So there was so many Browns. If you look up Hamilton Brown in and of itself, this got its way in here because this person is also a shopkeeper, right? But you have so many people of the same name in the same district, you have to be able to find some type of identifying marker to ensure that it's them. If you're going to go off on the deep end and be like, yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. I mean, but anyway, let's continue. Now, this is what I found curious. For the things I find curious, I'll let you know that I think it's curious. Now, this is 1877. And if you look close, we see Edwin Hamilton. It says male, but it also says colored, COLD. If you look on the top one, Mary Matilda, it says black. If you look under Edwin Hamilton, it says William Daniel. And then it says William is white, right? So in this case, Hamilton Brown is named as the father, and Mary Ann, his wife, Brown, is named as the mother. And this person is a shopkeeper. So this is where it gets a little curious. Again, we're having the same names, but it's getting curious because we don't see Mary Malvina anymore. We see Mary Ann. And is this the same person? We have to just stick a pin and keep going, okay? Here is Mary Malvina. This is the person that was on the paperwork. And Mary Malvina is said to have died at 53 years old in 1892. So we're only so far at Hamilton Brown Jr., which is the son of the Irishman who came to Jamaica. Okay. So who is Mary Jane? We saw that the paperwork said Mary Ann, but there's going to be someone coming up with the name Mary Jane. And again, like I said before, oftentimes these things are transposed for no rhyme or reason. I've seen some things looking for my own family. You're like, what were you guys thinking? Like, were you trying to confuse the future generations? I don't know. So anywho, Mary Jane Brown is said to have 3 children that I see. Let me just make that claim. Just because I don't see them doesn't mean they didn't exist, okay? Like, I don't see their children. That means they don't exist. We're doing too much. But anyway, Eliza, born 1884, Christiana, born 1885, and Lydia, born 1887. Now, where am I getting this from? Let's read a little bit of Donald J. Harris's Reflections of a Jamaican Father, because this is where I'm getting it from. He says that his roots go back within his family line to his paternal grandmother, Miss Christina Brown, descendant of Hamilton Brown. That's how I got here, because he said that Christina Brown is a descendant of Hamilton Brown. So when we're doing this research, we have to find amongst these people the names that he remembers, because we have to go on his memory. And to my maternal grandmother, Miss Iris Finegan, farmer and educator from Enion Town and Iverness ancestry unknown to me. So he's like leaning more towards the Brown side, not so much towards the Finegan side. And sometimes in families, it happens like that. You know more about one side of your family than you do your other side. Okay, if you have any questions or comments as I'm moving through, feel free to let me know. All right. The Harris name, so he's telling us where it comes from his paternal grandfather, Joseph Alexander Harris. So he gave us a lot of free game just now. He told us the name of his grandmother. He told us the name of his paternal and maternal grandmother. And he told us the name of his paternal grandfather. So now we got the makings of a tree. Okay. Landowner and agricultural produce exporter, mostly pimento or allspice. Another thing that happens often is in the Caribbean is that you don't, as the child, as the grandchild. I recently went to a funeral, and some of the people didn't even know that that was their loved one's name. Sometimes they call you by your middle name. Sometimes they call you by a name that's not even on your birth certificate, and everybody will know you by that name. And when you see the funeral announcement, you're wondering, who's this person? That's the Caribbean culture. For all of the people from the Caribbean in the chat, please let the people know whether or not that is Caribbean culture. So if you see him calling someone by one name, it doesn't mean that he was lying. It just probably means that's the name he knew her by. They didn't just go around calling everybody their government names. Let's continue. He says, he tells us when Joseph Alexander dies in 1939, 1 year after he was born, and is buried in the churchyard of the magnificent Anglican church with Hamilton Brown built in Brownstown. So far we see that it's going to be Hamilton Brown Sr., Hamilton Brown Jr., and Joseph Alexander Harris, all buried in this churchyard in Brownstown. Okay, let's jump down. He also tells us that she died in 1951 at the age 70. Her departure left him, he was only 14. I jumped right there. I believe he's talking about, I'm gonna come back to that one. I don't know why I put that right there like this. So we're gonna continue. Christiana Elita Brown. I'm over here acting like the records office in Jamaica keep leaving off a letter on Christiana's name. 1 minute I call her Christiana, y'all pardon me. Christiana Elita Brown, 1885 to 1951. Okay. Who's Christiana? He said his paternal grandmother, Christiana, Chrissy Brown. Okay. Now, remember I said, let me go back a few ones. Mary Jane Brown had Elisa, Christiana, and Lydia. Okay. So let's go forward. And we see that Donald said that Christiana is his grandmother. So I like to cross-reference. I came up with Elisa would have also been his grand aunt. So we see here that Elisa is born in 1884 to a Mary Jane Brown. Do we see that? Mary J. Brown. Now, something that should be known as we're going through this paperwork is that, again, I keep saying it, there was a culture. And one of the things that I found after looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these papers is that when you don't see a father's name, as you see, a big fat dash is going through that line. It's a little bit faded, but that's father's name, and the other dash is father's occupation. When you see that, and you also see laborer, there is a high chance, I'm not going to say the fake statistics of 99%, but there is a high probability this is a melanated person. High probability. So, and this is a melanated person who didn't get official training like becoming a carpenter or becoming a seamstress, or you understand? So in this case, she's a laborer, which is just, maybe you work in the cane field, maybe you work at a different plantation. She's a laborer. Mary Jane is a laborer, because who are these children from? This is Mary Jane's children with whom? With whom? Hamilton Brown Jr. This is what we're hearing, right? So this would be Elisa. Let's go forward. And how another indicator is, if you look in the box where it says X, the mark of Mary Jane, that would indicate that Mary Jane possibly didn't read or write. So that's another socioeconomic indicator that she may be melanated. Okay. At this time, 1884. Now we have Christiana, the person of interest. Let's go back again. What did I say? Elisa, we just saw Elisa's birth certificate. Christiana and Lydia. Okay. Christiana is supposed to be born in 1885. Okay. What do we see here? Christiana is a little bit blurry. You're going to have to, go in quickly and make your screen bigger. But it's 1885. Her name is Christiana. And Mary Jane Brown, a laborer, is her mom. Same location, X marks the spot. Where they're living, Brownstown. So the location is where they're supposed to be. The name of the mother is the same. The date of birth is accurate. And yeah, and the parish is correct. So let's continue. And again, just like Elisa, there is no father listed and no father's occupation. Now, why would there be no father listed? Much like today, if you're not married, the chances are he's not going to be on the birth certificate, especially at that time. What am I trying to say? I'm lining it up that Donald J. Harris said, not me. He said that they were connected to Hamilton Brown, and he said that his paternal grandmother was Christiana Brown. Let's continue. Now, if we want to do some quick math, I think it was Christiana is the reason why I put this 1951. So if according to the paperwork, he says she died in 1951, and we see this Christiana would have been born in 1885. He says she died at 70, and this is saying she would have died at 66. So let's continue, because again, there are some, and I saw this in my own family, there are some times when people do not have the correct age. I'm saying that's a good 4 years off, but nonetheless, we're going to continue for the sake of time, right? So we're going to take note. We're not going to like push that under the carpet and pretend like he didn't tell us 70 when the birth certificate is saying she would have been around 66. But I have to double check that that was for her. But let's continue. Now, this is who on his essay, this is who he told us was Christiana. Welcome to the conversation. We're gonna continue. We're gonna continue, Tyrese. After I finish this real quick, I couldn't resist the opportunity to go into some, go into some genealogy, especially Caribbean genealogy. Okay, so if we look good at Christiana, does anybody see possibly Christiana may have like some, I don't want to say 4C here, but she has some coils. Okay, if we take a look at Christiana's face, I didn't do the side by side between Christiana and her foreparents, but if we look at Christiana's even hairdo, it's giving a little bit of texture. Okay, it's giving a little bit of texture. So it would be safe to say that if Mary Jane, a laborer who did not read or write, was Christiana's mother with Hamilton Brown, it may be safe to say that she would have had some melanin. So looking for the first person to in this lineage to have some melanin, we found two, Mary Jane and now her daughter Christiana. She actually had 3 daughters, but for the sake of time, right? So Mary Jane, just to recap, is a laborer according to the paperwork who did not list the father's name on the birth certificate. So we know that something's going on. Much like how when we were looking at Norval's situation, Bob Marley's father, it's very similar, right? So there's certain stigmas of the day. There's certain things that were going on that what we're looking for in 2024 is not how they got down back in the day. It is not how they got down back in the day. So we have to account for that. So I went on to say Mary Jane put an X, which I irradiated. I went over that already. And let's go. So he goes on to say that his roots go back within his lifetime to his paternal grandmother, Miss Christiana, descendant of Hamilton Brown. I already established that. I'm going to keep going. She would have been mixed. That's all I'm reiterating on this page. Let's keep going. Now, this is something that you find and you come across. This is where I say people start going wild and buck wild on the computer and doing all kind of extracurricular stuff, right? But this is something that you come across where you would see. I heard it said that, oh, they said she had 8 children. I don't see the children. She had more than 8 children, and some children died, like Ethel Mae Brown, she died. So what you see often during this time is that women are having children back to back to back to back to back. Okay? Happened in my own family, happened in a lot of Caribbean families, happened in a lot of melanated families all throughout the diaspora. And if they were with someone of another ethnicity, they would just have a whole lot of, quote, mulatto or Creole children. So based on what we're seeing, Mary Jane could have very well been melanated. Mary Jane's daughter, Christiana, is very well melanated. Okay. Her father would have been Irish and her mother would have been melanated. And then these children also. Okay. So the person of interest on this long list is Oscar Wilde Brown. Okay. Oscar. Let's pay attention to Oscar. Let's continue. For those who just joined us, this is not for any other purpose than to use our skills to explore the genealogy of the past and to learn to better put into context what has happened. And Jamaica is one of those places that out of many one people. So it's hard to find, it's difficult to find people coming out of the Caribbean that does not have this levels of mixture that now it's so nuanced, but today we're trying to make it like it's black or white. You know, it's not a Michael Jackson song. It's not black or white. But let's continue. Again, I'm not caping for anybody. I like the truth. Let's continue. So he goes on to say, my apologies, the Harris name, he tells us where the Harris name comes from. So let's continue. According to the narrative now, this on the left is Christiana Elita Brown, and on the right, Joseph Alexander Harris. He just told us Joseph Alexander Harris was his granddaddy, and Christina Brown was his grandmama, right? Now, whether or not he believed they were married, that's another story for another day. But what we're seeing here, according to the narrative, is 1885, Christiana, 1871, Joseph Alexander. Let us continue. So far we found possibly 2 direct melanated people in her family line. Register of baptism, 1871, in the parish of Clarendon. Okay. We're going to go, because now we're looking at Joseph Alexander. What I also found is, unless there was a reason for a big move, a lot of the people would be concentrated and stay in a certain area, because it wasn't like you had mass transport like you do today. So mostly you will see people, if they're in Clarendon, they're in Clarendon unless they get married or unless they move for a job, and it's mostly the man, then he'll bring the woman. If they're in St. Anne, if they're in Westmoreland, if they're in St. Andrew, which a lot of people move to the country, to the city after a time, then you would see them there. But for this, all intents and purposes, it is said that Joseph is registered in Clarendon, okay, which is not that far. It's like middle of the country, south of St. Anne, okay? Let's continue. So according to this, I'm just according to what I've found. Now, if there's any error in the work, feel free to let me know. But I as I do all my work in this space, I go to great lengths to make sure that it is what the connection that it's making. All right. 1871, Joseph Alexander Harris is said to have been a male, colored, again, illegitimate. If you notice something interesting in this thing, you don't see a mother and you don't see a father, and you see Orange Hill. So that would mean if this is Joseph Alexander Harris, then he would have been mixed as well. If this Joseph Alexander Harris, 1871, is this Joseph Alexander Harris, 1871, then he would have been mixed, quote, illegitimate, Orange Hill. Okay, I'm gonna continue. Interesting stuff. So now we reach about three people now. We have Mary Jane Brown. We have Christiana, and now we have Joseph Alexander, who is now going to be the mate of Christiana. So these two Creole or quote colored people now are going to start having children. If this is because those are the pictures they gave us. I didn't just come up with them pictures. Those are the pictures that he shared in his article with his grandmother. Those are the pictures he shared. But I'm gonna continue. So again, Mary Jane is the woman of color. Christiana would be a woman of color, and Joseph Alexander would be a man of color. Let's continue. And Oscar Wilde Brown, we see here that Donald is saying that Oscar is his father. Mas Oscar. I heard a little like mas. What does that mean? It's a terminology that is even today in certain spaces in the country is still used. It's a greeting. It's a way in which they would say sir, but instead they say mas. Mas such and such. Mas Joe Brown. Mas whatever the case may be. Okay. And even if the person is related to you, depending on who they are, people call them things like miss. If you have a sister who may be older than you, you don't just call the sister their name Jane. You would have to say sister such and such, brother such and such. It's just a part of the culture. So the fact that he put Miss Beryl and Mas Oscar, even though they're his parents, it's not weird. It's part of the culture. Let's continue. Now, this is Oscar Wilde Brown birth certificate. It's a little fuzzy, but try looking a little bit. Now, you don't see a father named, and you don't see the father's occupation name, which would indicate that they were not married. Because we also didn't find a marriage certificate, which, hate to break anybody's, fantasy about back in the day, it happened very often. You know what I mean? It happened very often, especially if people were going across color lines. Anyway, so therefore, Oscar Wilde would have not been born Oscar Harris. He would have been born Oscar Brown. Let me make sure that you guys are caught up with where I am right now. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so he would have been Oscar Wilde Brown. If we see the little, again, like I said, X marks the spot. We also see Lydia Brown here, right here. Do we remember who Lydia is? Let's go back. This is how I cross-reference. Do we remember who Lydia is? Lydia is Christiana's younger sister. Okay, so when you see on the birth certificate, let me go forward here. If you look good where it says signature of the person who witnesses the mark of Lydia Brown, if this Lydia Brown is that Lydia Brown who had a sister whose name was Christiana, then yes, this Lydia Brown is said Lydia Brown, who was born to Mary Jane Brown and whose father would have been Hamilton Brown Jr. Okay? So Christiana has a child of many, and his name is Oscar. Now remember what we were just told. We were told by Donald J. Harris that Oscar, where did it go? Oscar was his dad. I'm trying to find it, but we were told by him that Oscar was his dad. But we're going to keep going. Here it is. Oscar was his dad, Mas Oscar, and Miss Beryl was his mom. Okay, so we see that for whatever reason, not being married. Oscar does not put his name on this here birth certificate. We're going to keep going now. Another thing to note is that the birth certificate doesn't get amended until 1950. If you could tell, everything else is hard to read. Brownstown is the location. St. Anne is the parish. So all of that is good. Lydia, she matches up. The birth certificate changes and he gets Harris in 1950. So that would mean that, what's name again? Donald, so many of these names in my mind right now. Donald's father was Brown until he became Harris in 1950. And that happened a lot. That, okay, you will get the name of your mother. And then as you go along and you change the paperwork, you can put your father's name on it. Okay. So apparently he thought also that Joseph Alexander Harris was his daddy. Let's continue. So now here is the little setup we got going on here. We have Christiana. We already saw I don't know if she 4C or 3B. I don't know, but she got some coils going on. Okay. And then we have possibly, based on the records, if this Joseph Alexander is that Joseph Alexander, that he was, quote, marked as colored. That means he would have been mixed. And here in the middle is Oscar. We just saw Oscar's birth certificate. But wait, there's more. Okay. This is me going close up so that you can see Lydia's name right there, Oscar's name right there, the date of birth, and Christiana. And this is also me going close up so that you can see Oscar Joseph Harris name being updated on the 12th of December, 1950. All right. So again, I reiterated that it should be noted that his name was updated. Why are we doing this? Because there's all kind of stuff in our family history. The reality is a lot of us don't even know what's in there, right? So it's interesting how, in today's space and time, without really honestly investigating the information, we're quick to be like, oh, I heard somebody got a white ancestor. That means, it reminds me of an episode on A Different World when Whitney found out she had a white ancestor. I mean, they might be in there. You understand what I'm saying? But that does not negate the other people who are in there as well. You know what I mean? Let's continue. Again, I'm quoting him about who his mother and father were. So now there's a question about Miss Beryl. We just established who Mass Oscar is. We just connected the lineage between the Irishman who came from Ireland to now. So let's go forward. In the middle is Kamala Harris's father, Donald Jasper Harris. Again, you may not find his birth certificate on these sites because the man is still alive. You're not going to find the people who are alive information out there like that. You're not going to do it. Okay. Beryl Finegan, who is said to be his mother, and Oscar Wilde Harris, which is said to be his father. This is who he said. So who am I? And this is not Simma. Who am I to be like, nah, that's not his peoples. I wasn't there. You know what I mean? Okay, you told us these are your peoples. Let's check it out. If these are his peoples, then if you look at Donald Jasper at the time when he was, just coming, getting his studies done in the US, he's very much melanated. I don't know if because he came out of the Caribbean sun. I'm not understanding the question today. But nonetheless, Beryl Finegan, who I'm hearing may or may not be the mother, and Oscar Wilde, even if, and I like to go on there, even if one is to say Beryl Finegan is not the mother, Oscar, we already done found like 4 melanated people in this person's history. So it would be a dub anyway. But we're going to continue. Maternal line. Remember, he told us about Miss Irish and then he said unknown. So maybe because they came from somewhere else or he wasn't around them enough to get all the information, either which way, he doesn't have all of the information that he needs to know about that particular line. Okay. Aura Iris and Patrick Finegan gets married. So if one is to be believed, we're going to go forward and we find that Aura, I was looking for Iris and her name, like I said, the name Yeah, Miss Beryl does look Indian. And that's when I saw her, that's exactly what I said earlier. I was talking to my mom. I was like, Miss Beryl looks Indian because let me see here. She looks Indian. But let's continue. We almost there, y'all. We almost there. So as we know, you had indentured servants from India come over. You had from China come over. You had the Irish come over. You had people coming over from all over. Okay, and they were mixing with the population. That's why you have all different kind of people, and you had Syrian Jews come over. There's a Jewish population. One of the first Jewish synagogues in Kingston is still there. Like, there is a lot of rich history that we miss out on when we're just trying to put it into the American black or white context. And when you step outside of that construct, there's so much more. But let me continue. Let us continue. Aura Iris Allen in 1889 marries Patrick Finegan in 1908. So if this Aura Iris is the mother of Beryl, then this would be her. Okay, and we see Patrick, and we see Aura Iris, and we see where they are in Saint Anne, and we see how old they are. She was 19 according to this storyline, and he was 25. Now, as we learned even in the Bob Marley story, that sometimes they don't be telling the 100%. They don't be telling the 100% on these ages, right? We even saw it on the marriage certificate between Norval and Sidella. All right, but let's continue. Patrick Finegan the second. Why do I say the second? Like I told you, the confusion comes in the way they be named. They just had a book and they just was like, forget it. I'm just going to name the kid the same thing. So why do we know that? Patrick Finegan, if you look at the father column, his daddy was also named Patrick Finegan. So what do you have to do? You got to make sure you have the right person. Okay? You got to make sure you have the right person. So we have two Patricks running around. So let's continue. I just put the second for the sake of argument. Okay. Patrick Finegan the second was born 1882. Right? We can see it all filled in, which would mean that Patrick Finegan, his daddy, was there. Because who signs it, the birth certificate? The daddy. Patrick Finegan it's signed for him because it's an X for him. What does that mean? More often than not, if there is an X and they're a laborer, we can almost assume that Patrick Finegan was melanated. What does that mean? We found another melanated person in this storyline. My goodness, they just keep popping up the woodworks. Okay. Patrick Finegan, more often than not, or more likely, Iris married Patrick Finegan. And Iris, as we saw, shared from Donald. Iris is also melanated. Okay. So I shifted it over so that you can see the mark for Patrick Finegan. So you see I'm not caping. You see that he's a laborer and he marked it like that. Chances are he was melanated too. Let's continue. So to recap, because I know this is a lot. I know it's information dump, but work with me here. Beryl, Oscar Wilde, both of these would be melanated people. Came together and had this melanated guy here, Donald Jasper in the middle, which would be Kamala Harris's dad. Okay. Now we're going to the maternal line, and we find that Iris and Patrick get married, and that Patrick, if this is the same Patrick, then he would have been also melanated, and Iris would have been melanated as per her grandson. Now, these would have been the children, Noel, Gloria Eugene, Bernard, and Abraham Judah. Look at the dates, 1908, 1909, 1911, 1913. But there's a gap. So she was like, bomb, bomb, bomb. She was having children. Wop. She was having children. And then all of a sudden, she took a little break. Okay? She took a little break. Okay? And what do we see? We see Beryl Magdalene Finegan, which Oscar told us, not Oscar, Donald told us was his mother. This woman here is who we're saying is Beryl. So these are the children, but there's something interesting going on with Beryl, so we're going to continue. We see St. Anne, we see the same location. If you look close, Patrick's name is on it, Patrick A. Finegan. His name is on the paperwork. I told you Noel, I told you Gloria. We see it here, 1908, 1909. Patrick is a planter, right? Patrick is a planter. If this Patrick is that Patrick, then he would be a planter. Let's go forward. Then we see this Patrick is also a planter, and they have Bernard and Abraham Judah. If this Patrick is that Patrick, and if this Iris is that Iris, because we see his mother is also formerly Allen, our Aura Iris Finegan, formerly Allen. So we see all of these are working together to say this is connected to this, is connected to this, is connected to this. And hopefully these are the right people. Then the question is Patrick Beryl Magdalene's father? And the reason I asked is because there was a gap. And when the birth certificate that is floating around for Beryl, when we look at the birth certificate, and this picture is Aura. This is the picture that was shared by Donald, Aura Iris Allen. And he's saying that that is Kamala on her lap, right? That's his maternal grandmother, who kind of does look like her daughter, Beryl, but we'll continue. We see that Beryl Magdalene, there's no father on the birth certificate, and there's no father's occupation. Okay, so we go back, we see Alexandria is where they had the child, district, St. Anne, and we see all of the same information. But when we get to 1917, for Beryl Magdalene, this particular Beryl Magdalene, we see Iris Finegan, formerly Allen, so we know a seamstress, so we know it's the same person, but we don't see the father. To me, based on my historical research, something either had to happen. This around was, I'm not saying that's where he went, because this is what I got, people. But there's a possibility that he either left. At this time, men and women were leaving Jamaica and going to the Panama Canal, because this is 1917. Did he leave for work? Did he leave from the parish? Something had to have happened, and she got pregnant, and she doesn't put the father's name on the birth certificate. So who's the father of Beryl Magdalene? We don't know. Not according to this, okay? Not according to this. So this is the birth certificate or the death certificate that I'm seeing like being rejected. I don't see why, and I'm gonna tell you why in a second. It tells you Iverness is the residence in the town of Alexandria, okay? On the 3rd of September, 1995 is when it says that Beryl died. She had sepsis, what is this? And bed sores, right? And then it says that Douglas Finegan was present at the death. And yeah, what did I say before? If this is 1995, if this person is still alive, you are not going to find them unless somebody put the tree together. So just because they're here and you can't find record does not mean they don't exist. That doesn't mean they don't exist, okay? So we see that Iverness, right? Let me go back here because we're at the end. Why I say that's curious is because when Donald is writing, when he's writing, I have to go all the way back. I should have put it right there too, but I didn't. When he put it, he said he didn't know a lot about that particular side of the family. He says, and to my maternal grandmother, Miss Iris Finegan, farmer and educator, and in town and Iverness. What did we just see on the death certificate? The same place that he said the maternal grandmother resided. And then he went on to say ancestry unknown to me. So therefore, he did not have a lot of information about that. And it would be curious because there would be a whole side missing if indeed they did not know who Beryl's, well, maybe they did know, but who Beryl's father was, right? So the Iris would have retained the name Finegan. However, when it came to Beryl, we don't see, if this Beryl is that Beryl, we don't see a dad on the birth certificate. So that tells me we see Iverness, Alexandria. That tells me something happened in that space. And lastly, we see that Miss Iris died in 1981 at the grand old age of 93. Okay. And then he goes on to talk about grieving the loss and that she's sitting with Kamala, which would be her here, right in the picture here, sitting with her on the lap. And that is what we have here. And that's how we got here. This would be her father and her mother. And based on the research, and that took a good little time here, based on the research, this would mean that she not only has 1, 2, 3, 4, she has about 6 confirmed, 8 a possible melanated people in her family history alongside, because that happened often, alongside the European mixture. And that is not a one-off story, because it is the story of a lot of what happened in Jamaica at that time. So hopefully that was helpful. I don't know why I spelled her name with an H, but nonetheless, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Hopefully that brought some clarity. I look forward to seeing and hearing more, but some of the stuff just had me over the top. I was like, man, come on. I'm going to open up the mic a little bit. And then if I don't hear much, then I'm going to go ahead and boogie. Let's see what the questions and conversations are going on right now. Peace and blessings to those who have just joined us. Again, like I said, I don't have a dog in this fight. The reason, Amuna, y'all already know, we talking about ancestry, genealogy, and the Caribbean. Medea, you understand me? I say? And then you can't just come in at the thing and play up in at the people and things like this and I come to a kind of crazy conclusion. No, that not gonna work. And as long as everybody come up, just ask that everybody be respectful as we boogie in. You understand? This is more about genealogy and history than it is about politics. So that I just wanted to say that as well. But I see Kaya, welcome to the conversation.
Hello.
Yes, welcome to the conversation.
Oh, sorry, catch me off guard. Yeah, man, bless up everybody.
Welcome.
Yeah, I want to ask a question when I always ask people, and it seems like them kind of scared past it. We're in 2024, right? This one drop thing, how long we gonna hold it? Because how we keep on allowing other races to define who is black. The one drop rule was not in. It was not an edict that was given out by black people. This was given out by white people, particularly white colonial slave masters who were absolving themselves of any responsibility for the mixture that they were creating. I mean, no other race on earth does this.
I hear you. So, but as it relates to the first question, because I think you came with multiple questions. So the first question, come again for me. Who defines what is black, or how long are we going to allow?
Yeah. How long we're gonna allow non-black people to define who is black and who is not? Cause we never made that edict say if you have one drop of black in you, then you're black. That wasn't
No,
something that we said.
I can't answer for the people as a whole, but I don't subscribe to black either. It's ethnicity and nationalities. You understand what I'm saying? So that whole concept of black to me needs to be explored, because it is a construct.
Well,
You
black is
understand what I'm
just a
saying?
place marker, you know. When we say black, I think we all know what we're talking about. We mean people that are of the African, descending from the African continent, particularly from Western and Central Africa. Us, basically. I would assume most of everybody who is on this channel here, you, I, people, we know ourselves when we're talking about ourselves. So,
But
like,
what I'm saying is, because of the history of Jamaica, not even the Caribbean, even the transatlantic slave trade, we are at a point in history now that even just going through this genealogy, how do we know who was black and who was Indian and who was African? It's the way in which, even when you look earlier on, when I showed the way in which they were categorizing everybody, yes, they made those categories, but what else are we going to go by? Somebody may appear to be black, quote unquote, but they may have all type of other nationalities. And I think that's what the question is now. You understand what I say? Like, oh, the person is white because they had a white ancestor. Is that how it works?
No, that's what that's kind. You're kind of leading into what I'm saying because
Right.
okay, most of us, well, I'm Jamaican, so not just Jamaican, but like Caribbean people. Most of us, really the Western Hemisphere, people in the diaspora, black people. Most of us have some kind of multi-generational mixing in us, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean that because my great 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 grandfather was white, I cannot claim that. But yet the inverse is true for black people, or for white people who may have a great great grandfather who is black. Back in those times, they say, well, that person is black, but yet they can still enjoy all the spoils and basically become the demigods of the black society, even though they don't look like us really. They don't have our hair type and hair texture. So what happens is we prop them up, and they know that, so it's that they can kind of skate in between, like they become the Scrooge of the white world and yet the demigods of our society. You
I
know
mean,
what I
I
mean?
think you have a point. That's another conversation. I think we're seeing it, right? But I think the conversation would go in another direction if we explored it fully. You get what I'm saying? Because it's kind of like it done do already. You know what I mean? Like we are here and we are here trying to figure out how can you use what you're saying, because based on a conversation someone asked Janet Jackson and she says she has a white ancestor so she's not black, right? Again, I'm not caping for nobody, but if that be the case, then that would be the case, as you're saying, for many of us. Out of many one people, you have a Chinese ancestor, so then you're
That,
not black. You have
but
an
that's
Indian
another thing.
ancestor, then you're not black. You understand what I'm saying? Where does this go from here? Where do we go?
Okay, I mean, you see, this is the difference between us and animals, right? Animals, human beings can course correct themselves. An animal is pretty much destined to whatever a lion was doing 500 years ago, they're probably going to be doing it today because they're working up our instinct. I think we have the power to define how we go forward. You know what I mean? And because, like I said, if me know somebody have one white grandmother or one black grandmother or one great grandmother, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna call them black. They don't phenotypically look black. More often than not, they don't really see themselves as black. Maybe if they're amongst you, them just placate to you, and because they know, say, we will treat them differently. But I'm not going to. I don't feel any obligation to have to call them black because they don't look like my mother. They don't look like my father. And sorry for bulldoze the conversation, but this Rennie Armstead, um, you need to, all respect to your sister, but you need to kind of educate yourself there. Not Black people are not the only people who are considered melanated, right? Even white people have melanin
Yeah,
in them.
yeah, I use the term. I think maybe she may be responding to something I said because I use the term, like you said, melanated. You have Indians who melanated. You have people all over the world who's melanated, right?
Everybody is melanated.
Right.
It's just that
So
there's
at different
varying
levels
degrees.
and degrees. So, like I
Right.
said, for me personally, black is a construct that was a label that's placed. You don't come from a place named black. Where the
No,
country
but we
name
know
and
what we're
name black.
talking about. We know.
Huh?
I agree with you there, but at
Right.
the same time, we know what we're talking about. Like human, the English language is what we have to work with. It's what we know. Is what we speak. So if what makes a cat, what makes the door a door, is it's basically words that we like symbols or words that we assign to things so we can identify them. So I'm not saying that yeah that maybe we could have come up with something better than black, but we know what we're talking about when we say black. Like we don't have to go
We,
down.
we kind of we kind of don't, because if you look at the history of this construct, black and white, even it evolves over time, right? There's some books I can't get for the books right now, but there was something that happened that before The Italian wasn't classified as European or white. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, he was classified as European, but not necessarily
Not
white.
white. You understand what I'm
Hmm.
saying? So this
Hmm.
thing constantly, we don't really hold the quote reins on what qualifies because we don't hold the goal, so we're not making the rules. You understand what I'm
Yes,
saying? It's
yes,
the
man, I
person who
understand you.
hold the goal that's making the rules and keeps changing it as time goes on. So I
But
think it's curious now. I don't mean to cut you that this
no, no, no.
conversation is a conversation when a simple search, I mean it's simple if you know what you're looking for, but a search to see something that the Jamaica's motto says, that this clearly is a person who came out of many. So then I'm confused at how, you know, how we get to this point.
So then she's multiracial.
That's
Why
exactly
we
what
have to
she
call her
is.
black? Yeah, that's what she is. That's what she is. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what she is.
Like I'm not gonna call her black, but sister, I kind of have to disagree with you still because when them say that like black is a construct and it's ever changing. Ever changing to who? I think most black people know that when you say black, we basically know, and the world at large, when you say black people, they're basically talking about African peoples, particularly sub-Saharan African people.
But that's for over here. When you come outside, this is something that was placed upon the people. When you leave here and you go to Africa, black, what is that? Who are you? Cameroonian, South African, Ghanaian, Nigerian? Where are you from? Zambia, Ethiopia? It's only used as a whole, a placeholder because the lack of a land, the lack of a connection. So you
Hmm.
have to use something to say a color. But
Well,
outside of this place, that don't work. What does that mean?
sister, my daughter's mother is Kenyan, and
Okay.
they consider themselves black. Like yes, they are nationalistic first. Africa does see themselves in terms of nations, which I think, why, all right, that's how it should be. But on whole, like just like a generic term, we do know that they do recognize themselves as black.
But is that recent? Because are we talking about colonialization? Are we talking about after Africa is colonialized, or is this before?
It is recent, but in a way,
Yeah,
it
that
is
makes sense.
old as well too, because like they've always had, okay, like Sudan means black, Ethiopia means burnt face.
Right.
These, and there's a
But
couple of them that don't come to mind. All of these indicate dark skin, black skin. And they weren't talking about Indians, they weren't talking about Arabs, they were talking specifically about people from below from below the Sahara. You know what I mean? So
I don't think I get you, but I don't think in this particular context it means the same thing. You understand me? I say over here it's a replacement for who you really are and where you really come from. Which this is why we have the confusion. If you say this person is Irish, this person is of Indian descent, this person is, you understand? Then that's different. You know what I mean? But now you just put the label on it, black. What does that mean? What does that entail? And I think that's why it causes so much confusion in conversation because it is not easily defined.
so you think white people are looking at Indians and calling them black?
Come again?
Do you think that white people are looking at Indians, or Chinese people are looking at Indians and calling them black?
I think
Or,
on the
or, or
birth
you think there's
certificate
like you
of
think
the
there's like
woman we're talking about, they've looked at her and called her white. Like, how did you look at her mother and call her white?
who was
Like,
really were people actually calling her white? I don't think anybody was doing that. I
it's
heard
on. No,
somebody
I didn't. I didn't get to the last page on the presentation. Hold on. Let me get you the last page on the presentation.
because that's just idiotic. I don't think anybody
I'm going
with
to get
with
the
a
last
brain
page
in
on the
them mind.
presentation. Hold on there. They
Mm.
called her Caucasian.
But sister, I know this is gonna be hard for a lot of people, but look it up. Indians technically are Caucasian.
What?
Caucasian and white are not exclusive.
That's true.
Europeans, yes, are white, but not all Caucasians are. Sorry, whites are Caucasian, but not all Caucasians are white. If you get what I'm saying, Indians actually do classify under Caucasian.
I
You
thought they
even
were
have even
Asian.
North Africans are considered Caucasian.
That's what I'm saying. All of this stuff gets very confusing as you go along, and it causes like I don't know if you saw what was going on. Why I felt the need to just look at the genealogy because I'm hearing, for instance, seeing someone's grandmother who they're saying is their grandmother, and someone was saying, no, that's not their grandmother, that's their helper, because how could that be their grandmother? When the reality is a lot of people from the Caribbean may stand next to their grandparents and you would have never known say them grandparents. Whether them darker than them, whether them brighter than them. You understand what I'm saying? So I think it's ignorance that if we don't address it in this way, you will allow, oh, just by looking at it, the person could never be your grandparent because of what you think it should be, and that's not the reality because of how the people came about.
Yeah, but Kamala is not your typical Caribbean child. I think most black people, okay, let's take Jamaica for example. I mean, even not gonna say most, but a great number of us, myself included, have like a Indian grandmother or a European or half Indian, half Irish or Chinese grandmother or great grandmother, right? But predominantly, we're of African stock, which it shouldn't be surprising because Jamaica is over 95% black. So the majority of our makeup is going to be African, even if we have a little smatterings here and there. But Kamala first of all, she is not born in Jamaica. She has a completely Indian um mother. Her whole other side is Indian, so she's basically the inverse of what many of us are. Where
What?
we might have like a little quarter
Right.
percent of an Indian or something. She's the inverse of that. She's maybe because when I look at even her grandmother, her grandmother look like she have Indian in her. So
She does.
to me that would mean say her father is not even half black. So
No, we
how
would.
am I going?
Well, what we're looking at, if you look at the history of when they came to New Orleans, you're looking at the culture where you have octoroon, quadroon, you have you understand, you have
Which are
mulattoes.
not
So
black to
that,
me.
well,
Yeah.
again, but you cannot take away you cannot take away what's in there. I think that was the point of me. First of all, just putting some
No,
of
I
the
wouldn't
facts
take it
there.
away. I would just seek
It's
to.
there. You can't
I
say
wouldn't want
you
to
know
take away
there
nothing
enough.
from anybody. They just are what they are. You know what I mean? Like you're genetically what you are. Like if you culturally want to define yourself as black, I mean, I may not see it that way, but I ain't gonna take it away from you either.
Right.
But
That's what I'm saying. So
genetically,
don't
you
go on
are
and
what you
snatch
are.
people can't.
Sorry, I was talking over you. I'm sorry. What did you say?
No, go on. No, I'm saying the conversation, it creates this level of confusion even in today's space and time, even amongst mixed children today, right?
Well,
They don't know where to identify with. Cause one person I tell you say no black, the next person I tell you say no white. Everybody I tell you say yeah no this and yeah no that, and
sister.
it gets confusing. It's like the reality is if we go back over what's in there,
Hmm.
the bigger thing for me is that in the culture you had people coming from Europe, from Britain, from Spain, from Ireland, and they were procreating with the enslaved people or the freed people,
Right,
and they had two sets of families.
right,
They had, so when you look for them, you be like, oh, they didn't marry. Yeah, because them not breed up with people them. And so
right,
this is why you have what's going on. Nobody want to talk about that. We want to talk about how much you're not something. But the reality is the reason we got here was because of the choices that the people were making. And the people who are here now, they didn't, what me I try to say, them never say, oh yes, met my band, sir. You came here.
right.
Right. So the reality is now that you're here, what are you gonna do? What are we gonna do about it? How do we address it? Is there a
Well,
category that we feel better putting this person in?
at the risk of sounding arrogant, I'm really not that confused. I mean, I know a black person when I see one. I know a black person who has slight mixing when I see one. I know one who has it heavily mixed when I see one. I'm almost certain I know when I see like a 50-50 black and white person. We're black. We tend to know our people. Even when it's like very distant in you, we can kind of say, there's something there. And I mean, but black people, like somebody who is definitively black. Then when I look at you, I don't have to guess and make up
So
anything.
yeah, said Bob Marley never definitively black. That you say.
No, wait, is the thing with Bob? Okay, I'm glad you
I'm
mentioned that.
in trouble. I don't know.
No, man, no, in no trouble. I'm glad you mentioned that. because even when me growing up, I didn't even realize that Bob was half until I got a little older and started reading up on him. But really and truly, the reason why you find a lot of Caribbean people or African people when they're biracial, they look pretty strong on their African side is because their parents are actually black. Okay, for example, now a lot of black Americans, okay, when they're racially, well, I hate to use the term mulatto, however, right? Sometimes if you look at them, they actually look more closer to their whiter side because when you read the checker stack, their black parents have something mixed up in them too. Mama Booker, when you look at Mama Booker, I venture to say she was 100% black. So when she got mixed with a white man, I met Bob Marley. Those African genes come out very strong. Even though you can know that Bob is mixed. You know what I mean? But he is exactly half African and half European. But a lot of these black Americans, when you really check it, their black parent was not fully black either, which I would say is the same thing with Kamala. Her quote unquote black father, he's not fully black. Look at The Rock, for example, right? Dwayne Johnson. Dwayne Johnson's father is black. But if you've ever seen The Rock's father, you can know that even his father is mixed.
So
You know what I'm
so
saying?
then so but we do have to admit, because I think when I started this and I was hearing the conversation, it was she's not black at all because she's connected to a slave master, Hamilton Brown. And I guess I mean I set out to just gather the information and share it. And I mean we can go back and forth about the percentages
Mhm.
that not really go benefit me really, but you know what I'm saying. It is like it no matter how we feel about it, it's still there.
She have black. I would say she has black ancestry, but I'm not going to call her a black woman. Because that means they can basically lord and master over us, and they don't race whether we want like it or not. A lot of race is phenotypical. Is how do you actually look? What type of features do you have? I mean, and there's no way how am I gonna look at Mariah Carey and give Mariah Carey all the same set asides and all the same distinction as a black person when she doesn't really have to she doesn't really have to.
Alicia's,
You know what I'm saying? Yo, let me give you
Alicia's
another scenario. Here's another.
yeah.
A lot of black women ain't going like. You ever watch that Damian Marley video, "Living It Up"?
No, a
We're
long time.
living it up out of the ghetto. You ever hear that one? There?
Me here, women are watching. What you mean
Okay,
there?
it's a good song, but you know why I can't stand it? Okay, because first of all, Damian Marley is only a quarter black, see? And then his son is even far more mixed than him because I think his mother is like from Trinidad, like a Indian coolie woman from Trinidad. See? So they're in Trenchtown off of First Street. They're walking through First Street in Trenchtown, and it's like he has a gang of definitively black people walking behind him. And he's talking about how his father, they came from here and he worked so hard and got himself out. But all I'm seeing there is, wow, another 20 years from now, because you can't say Elijah Marley is a black youth. There's nothing black about him. But he's going to be able to work off of the fact that him have the name Marley and his father was a recognizably black man. So he's going to be able to say, oh, him, even though he doesn't have to deal with any of the hardship of black people or anything like that, but yet he still get to kind of have that little black
But
swagger and
I
say that
think
you know what I
I
mean?
think you're speaking to exactly why, and you see it even in South America, that they what you're saying about what her family did is speaking to exactly what you're speaking to, where you may be coming from a certain place and then they I don't even like the term, but basically they bred out.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
understand what I'm saying?
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm
That's
saying.
exactly what you're saying. That's what you're
Mm,
illustrating, and that's
mm,
what happened. And it's
mm-hmm,
for the same things. Those social constructs that were put in place during slavery, before slavery, and after slavery are still in place today.
mm-hmm.
And you see many people, even in some Spanish countries, you will hear in Brazil in different places, marry white,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Bring up the
understand what I'm
race.
saying? So that you can brighten the race, so that
Yeah,
what you're speaking about, those advantages, they can take advantage of those things as opposed to embracing who you are. You understand
right.
what I'm saying? So
Unless it's advantageous of you for you to say when when it suits you that, oh, I I'm black, or me, because they can't deny it. They look at Bob Marley and Jamaica, and then they can always. But if Bob Marley was not a reggae star, they would not you would never even hear that side of the story.
So the question is this conversation, because like I said, I don't really get into that politics thing, but is the conversation about, is the person black, or can the person relate to your social economic struggles? And will they be a true representation of the things that you need? Because that's what I'm hearing you saying about Damian Marley Pitney. You know what I'm saying? That you are
Hmm.
going to be in the lead of all of these people who you really can't identify with because that's not your struggle.
Right. I mean, and
Okay,
it's
so
not
because I'm
you.
trying to say, is this about blackness or is this about something else? And to me,
It
it
is
sounds like
about
it's
blackness,
about
and
something
it is about something else too. You know what I mean? Because phenotypically, you don't look like a black man. You don't look like you're coming from the African, genetical pool. And also socially, you don't have to claim it, because nobody's gonna really look at you, and especially in a Jamaica, they're not gonna hold you to that. They might gonna say you're bright, or you're high color, so you don't
right.
really have to claim that. But at the same time, you can still you can, excuse me, you can still use the word nigger as you like. You can still, like, have a little swag. Black
So
woman
we
are
are
gonna
trying
love
to
you
say,
off because you have pretty hair.
it's the best of both worlds. There's
You
actually a
get,
book.
yeah.
There's
Yeah,
a book called Passing. I think, did I get that
yeah,
book?
I'm familiar with that book.
You're
Yeah,
familiar with that one, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, this
yeah.
is not something new. This is not
Mm.
something new. And again, I think having these conversation helps to talk about the real issues. You understand what I'm saying? Like right now, is she black? Did she have one black ancestor? One somebody inside that? Like the real issue is what was plaguing the community, what was plaguing the society then is still plaguing the society now. If we want to be honest, you understand what I'm saying? Because at that time, the closer you were to, especially in America, let me say I studied American slavery, the closer you were to the European slave master, it was the more genteel you were, the more cultured you were, supposedly. You understand?
Right,
And the
right.
further you were from that was the more native and quote unquote primitive you were. Right. So
Yeah.
all of what you're talking about, that very basis of this conversation, to me, it seems like it's still what people are holding to be true, even if they don't believe that they're thinking that way.
Right. Mm. Yeah, I feel you. But
So,
I'm just saying, we as a black nation, there's nothing wrong if you have like some mixed cousins and whatever, or you yourself is, mixed or whatever. But the thing is, I don't think we need to have people constantly representation of us, when majority of us do not look like that. You know what I mean? Because it's okay. Put it this way: a black woman still has yet to ever give birth to a black president. Like, think about that. You know what I mean? Like, so it's always these people who are they're the mouthpiece of us. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think that is to our advantage, really. Mm.
okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. For those
Yeah,
who
man,
just,
everybody bless up.
yeah, man, bless up. For
All right.
those who just joined us, welcome to the conversation. I already went over the research. So if you missed it, just, go and chill out and then come back on the flip side and go through the research and thing. And just, the thing for me why I entered the chat on this conversation is the when it's easy for us to just, and I'm thinking specifically about when we're doing our own family research and thing, or when we want to believe something we hear on the internet. It's easy for people to just run with it. You understand me? I said, and then when the truth comes, we don't move with such urgency that you know what, I misinformed somebody, that was incorrect, and that's dangerous. Like I said, I even seen it as far as people trying to go into the records and changing things without proof. Like, she's not the only person connected to this family. So why would you? They did the same thing with Bob Marley's family. They did the same. Why would you go in and compromise someone else's familiar integrity because we want to prove something in 2024? You know what I mean? So it's a lot of the irresponsibility that I'm seeing that is dangerous. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, that's just my thought for that. Anybody have anything else to say? Feel free to do so at this time. If not, I'm gonna go ahead and wind down. Let me see. I don't know why I insisted on putting an H on that lady name. My apologies. Let me see if I missed anything. Anybody else? I put the link in the box. NS is asking, does blackness mean poor? Is that what the thought is? As something, come up and share your thoughts, because in some places that's how it's that's what, I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's how some people see it. Black men like breed out so the future race is mixed. I mean, a lot of stuff is going on right now. A lot of stuff is going on right now. Kevin says in Britain, Kamala would have been labeled as mixed race black person or mixed black person. And you see that type of thing still on the records. You will see somebody saying they're African, meaning they're not mixed, and you may see Creole, meaning they are mixed, or you may see colored, right? There were different labeling and classifications during that time that, it may have taken on something different today, but they that's how they did it at that time. Why Alicia said if she start watch Kalalu in a bathtub. I saw that, but I was in the middle of a conversation. Oh, yo, that's nasty, fam. Over there peeling and washing Kalalu in the bathtub. What the backside? So anyway, with that said, let me make sure I don't miss nothing. Yes, indeed. Brazil has different caste systems. Indeed. There are some interesting documentaries on what happens in those spaces. There's a book that I had. Says people have malicious internet with their fabrication. Yeah, it's like there's no need to do that, right? Especially in this space. Yeah, I thought so. Indians classify as Asian. I was gonna say that. There is a book called here. This is a book written by a lady named, when I used to be on the Philippe Matthews show many years ago, there's a lady who used to come on. Her name is Jacqueline Badalora. The name of the book is Birth of a White Nation, the Invention of White People and Its Relevance Today. This is an interesting book. It goes into actually inventing what I was speaking to Kaya about earlier, especially in America, the invention of this concept. I'll tell you the name of the book again. The name of the book is The Birth of a White Nation, the Invention of White People and Its Relevance Today. And it's a European woman who wrote this book, so nobody don't feel like, you understand what I'm saying? But it goes into what was the impetus behind creating these type of social constructs and how they affected people even up until today. So I don't see anybody else trying to come up to the mic. So let me see a few more questions here, and then I'm a boogie. Black prosecutor with military tendencies bring. Oh, Colin Powell is one thing. Oh, Colin Powell. Yeah, I remember. Come on, Colin Powell, Jamaican too. How can she be standing next to the paternal grandmother in 1990? Again, Kimberly, that's a good question. So the reason I put up the thing is that where did we get the information that the paternal grandmother died in 1990? So what I was using, this is where the confusion comes in, right? So the first issue, I'm glad you raised that issue. So the paternal grandmother's name is, what's the paternal grandmother's name? Because it wouldn't be the paternal grandmother, it would be the paternal grandmother who would be the Beryl. And according to the research, Beryl passes in 1995. So if that Beryl is the same Beryl, then 1995 she's born in 1964, 74, 84. She's almost 29 years old by 1995, and it's very possible that she would be standing next to the paternal grandmother. Well, actually, that's the maternal grandmother. The paternal grandmother passed before. So I know that sometimes it's confusing to go on both sides. So I appreciate the first question. And the first question would be, what was the name of the paternal grandmother? And then I could go back to that part in the research, and then we can go from there. So according to the research, the paternal grandmother is who? I'll pull it up again. Let's go back. Like in doing this work, I remember looking for one family member for the longest time. My mother's brother, could not find him, could not find him, could not find him. It took me months. So I find it curious how people just like, yeah, I found everything. Everything is not found because that's not how the system works. But anyway, let me go ahead and go back to the paternal grandmother real quick so that we can answer Kimberly's question. Let me take this off the screen. Let me know if you guys can see it. So according to him, no, I went back too far here. According to him, his paternal grandmother's name is Christiana Brown. And Christiana Brown is this lady right here. But this is his grandmother, right? This is his grandmother. So let me go forward here. Christiana has Oscar Wilde Brown Harris. And her grandmother would be this woman right here. Let me go forward. If the records are to be believed, her grandmother would be Beryl Finegan. So this is the woman that she would be standing next to in that picture. And this woman, if the record is to be believed, would have died in 1995. So it's more than possible. Let me get the record here. It would be more than on September the 3rd. So Beryl Finegan, although, and the reason why I cross-referenced where he said, even though a lot of information Donald said wasn't known about her, Iverness is one of the residence places that let me get it again, that he spoke about. So in that context, she would have been able to stand next to the grandmother because the grandmother wouldn't have passed until 1995. Now, if you don't believe this is the grandmother, then that's when you have a problem, right? That's when you have a problem. Let me see here. Kimberly says, Kamala says her paternal grandmother was Barrow. I may be spelling incorrect. Yeah, let me just say that they were not keen on spelling. Like I low-key put a H on her name. My apologies. But the spelling, I've seen my own family history spelled, the names have been spelled different way. It's still them. The people who are writing these records did not go to great lengths to make sure every time they spelled it, it was spelled correctly. So you have to look for other identifying markers. But according to the research, if you came a little later, you could definitely go to where I went over the whole thing. But I will yeah, Queenie, I saw that. She's the reason. And a friend was like, Faith, you need to check this out, Amuna. And when I took a look at it, I'm like, some of what Candace is doing is when you already formulate a theory, it becomes difficult to see what doesn't fit within that construct. That's why it's difficult. It's dangerous to when you're going to go, especially to genealogy work, you already trying to like start put the pieces in. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I found troublesome of what she was doing. A, she didn't understand the culture that she's researching. So those were some questions. B, she didn't understand the records and what was customary of that time and what of that day and what it could mean. And because of those things, you may get errors in your information. So I definitely saw that, and it was the impetus for me just sharing this right here. Let me see what's going on here. Jeremiah Wagwan, what's going on? I'm back doing a little genealogy here. Becky said, "Look at the headline. It's true. I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to Maury Povich the situation, but I was like, no, sir. Look on the hairline. I didn't want to go there though. I didn't want to go there, so I just put the picture up. Let me see here. Let me see. Let's go to the hairline. Let's go to the videotape, people. Yeah, I didn't want to go there, but yeah, it's giving hairline. Kamala includes the pic of her and the black paternal grandmother in her book. The truth will, yeah. Well, if that's what she put, and that's what's out there, and if this is the woman, then that would be her. And I'm not sure what the conversation, why the conversation is here. Well, I don't know what I put the link in the box. If anybody wants to come up, I'm trying to read all these comments here. Let me see what's going on. Kimberly says, "How is the same paternal grandmother holding Kamala?" It's not the same lady. Let me go back. As a toddler, older than the same woman standing with her in the more recent picture. Great question. Okay, so let's take a look here. According to the research, that's all I could do. I wasn't there. All right. So let's go back for those who may have just joined us. The woman who's holding her in the picture, let me go here, would be the mother of Beryl Finegan. They look similar because if it were to be believed, they're mother and daughter. Okay? So let me go here. Where is this thing right here? Here. Wait. The mother here is Aura Iris, and the daughter would be Beryl Finegan. I'm missing the L. My apologies. It's been a long day. Okay. So I already went over all the birth certificates and everything. So this 1960 picture and this 1995 picture is of two very similar looking women. One, according to the narrative, is the mother, and the other is the daughter. So this would be her great grandmother and her grandmother, not paternal and maternal. The one holding her, it would be her great grandmother, and the one in the middle, Beryl, would be her grandmother, her father's mother. Let me see if I missed anything else. Eve says, "I agree with the first male caller. Unfortunately, the host is trying to muddle and stay on the fence. It's not that complicated." Eve, feel free to come up. I'm not sure if you saw the presentation. I'm not sure if you understand why I did this, why I even went into it. I don't think I'm muddling the conversation at all. The reality is the assertion is that the person is not black, right? And so one would have to define that. If somebody says somebody is not something, one would have to define what that thing is. And so what I did was what I do is I did the genealogy according to what's left on record, and we found multiple people, quote, of color in her genealogy. So coming to the conclusion that some people are coming to, again, not on the politics side, but just on saying this person is not black because they have a white ancestor, then one has to define that. Then that would mean a large majority of people are not black, quote unquote, because they have a white ancestor. So I don't, you feel free to just click the link if you need any more clarity. So I don't see any more questions. This topic is something that goes on and on and on. I'm not sure exactly what the people are looking for, because the truth be told, even if the person was black, Martin Luther King was quote unquote black. You understand what I'm saying? Marcus Garvey was quote unquote black. We find any and everything to be the reason why, right? I went over 30 something episodes of a very heavily melanated man called Marcus Garvey. There wasn't any muddling of the waters, and the people still had an issue with Marcus. Now, Marcus was off the chain. Okay, make no mistake about it in certain areas. But the reality is, I don't think this really has to do with black or white, because even if you did have somebody who classifies or qualifies to be something, you're going to find something else wrong. That's history. That's history. You're going to find something else wrong. When Marcus came to America, you had other melanated people saying he's black, he's fat, he's ugly, and he's from the Caribbean, right? So when Marcus qualified and checked one box, then you said, oh, he wasn't something in another box. You know what I mean? So this is not new behavior. It just happens across, right? If you deal with the person or what they have done, again, I'm not getting to the politics of it, but then that would be a better case. All I'm saying, like, this case for those who have presented it is a little weak. You know what I mean? You know how you're going to go to court and you're going to present the case is a little weak. Like Alicia's saying, you kind of got to present the case on something else. You can't build the case on this because yeah, you know. One would have to prove, y'all are arguing about who's Indian. One would have to prove, even though we say some of the people in her family lineage look Indian, one would have to prove that. You know what I mean? One would have to prove that they were Indian. I dropped the link in the box. I don't see nobody else coming up. I'm going to. Why do I have hide current comment? What is that? If I accidentally hid your comment, my apologies. That I just pressed the wrong button. So let me just and that's kind of what we do. It's called moving the goalposts, right? And that's why the conversations are usually circular and don't get anywhere, because we make up an assertion, somebody will address that assertion and then disprove it or prove it, and then we move the goalposts and we run somebody else. I see a hill. Welcome. I can't see who it is. So I just pray that you, when you come up, you're respectful and ready to engage in the conversation.
Hi. Yeah. Well,
Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
I'm not Jamaican. I've spent some time in Jamaica, but I wouldn't pretend that I know half of what there is to know of Jamaica. I am American. I am Black American. So the context here is that it's political. At the same time, it's cultural in that you have someone who did not identify as Black earlier in their career. And earlier in their career, took a certain focused position on how Black should be treated. There was a history of Hillary identifying Blacks as predators, super predators. And then there was a history of Biden following up with legislation, and then of Kamala following through with actually incarcerating people. So that we don't miss that, number one. And so with that history, and then later running, when she was introduced to the Senate, she was introduced as the first Indian woman. And then as Black when she ran for president. So that is, as I trace things, the origin of this question of her race, and then not having clarity about who she is. She spent the last 3 years not being very clear about much of anything. No one in the administration has.
This is true.
So that brings about the question. But the question in race in America is very specifically Black or white. We had a sort of eugenic classification of us that is very similar to, well, derived. South Africa derived the same sort of eugenic definition. Australia as well, where you're classified, Walter Plecker officially and legally classified us as colored be, to differentiate us from the Indians. So we have a very, I think, different. We have a different classification of who we are as Black as opposed to Jamaica, where it's more transient. I mean, Jamaica definitely has all cultures who pass through, and some stay and assimilate, actually, to a degree, at least in language, right? At least in how you speak. Like everyone immediately wants to pick up the language. But I'm not sure about Blackness as far as who you are as a people, and a people politically. I know there was a lot of back and forth between Siaga and Manley. And I always wondered what that meant for you as far as having two presidents who, in my eye as an American, didn't appear to me to be Black.
And there is the complexity of the reality. I mean, all of what you're saying is true as it relates to how she presented. But as you were speaking, a question came to my mind. Does her willingness to identify with something negate what she is? Is it cultural or is it genetic?
For me, it's cultural, because I say the same thing. When Obama first ran, I said the same thing, because I knew who his mother was and where he grew up at that time. And I knew who his father was. And I was working in international circles. So even though he was presenting himself as Black, there is a thing, and I would say this would even be for immigrants, for Jamaicans. I know growing up in a mixed, I grew up in New York, so I know a lot of cultures, and we're friends with a lot of people. But I know when I went to my Jamaican friend's house, they were not cooking collard greens. Right? The culture is different. And as much as you can spend time with someone and sort of swap or pick up languages, that doesn't make that who you are.
I
And
agree, but go ahead.
People don't usually, especially Jamaicans specifically, don't usually trade that off.
No, but this is for the sake of this conversation, right?
Yeah.
This is where the confusion comes in, because even like I asked the caller earlier, if we can't define something, or if the definition itself is transient, right? It depends on who you ask, right? Is Black a color? Is it a people? And I'm now hearing culture.
Black is a number of things.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it is. I start off by saying you respect the country that you're in. You respect that you can't make assumptions about what Blackness means in that country. And you understand how Blackness was assigned in that country, and you're able to think about it from both a dominant perspective. By dominant, I mean in Jamaica, I think the Indian or Chinese would be a dominant minority in Jamaica. So, or in America, whiteness is the dominant majority now. Understand it from that perspective and from the people's perspective who have been assigned.
Well, are you familiar with what Candace Owens was sharing about the genealogy.
I watched it. Yes.
Okay. So did you watch this one from the beginning?
I did not, which is why I did not originally
Okay.
connect.
Right. So
I caught it. Yeah.
that's basically the only thing that I'm addressing here. I go over genealogy. Like I don't have a dog in this fight in respect to the politics of it, right? What
Yeah.
I am seeing done is the use, the weaponization of this black and white construct for political purposes, right? And the use of records and history that this is reason why I did. It's not the first time I've done it. I've done it
No,
for
I
my.
understand why
You
you
understand what I'm
did
saying?
it. I
So this,
understand that she was deducing. She had sort of a equation of blackness or whiteness, right? And by identifying at what point someone was born or how they were identified by race on their record. I did not notice you said that the records were being changed, or
oh
maybe
yeah.
she was not showing the complete record. Is that what you were saying?
No, what I'm saying is now because this conversation has turned towards genealogy and the sites that have this, people are taking it upon themselves to listen to what is being said and changing people's records in on like their family records and making connections that shouldn't necessarily be made because they want to prove a point in theory. And so as someone who is a proponent for knowing your history and knowing where you're coming from, I find it highly problematic just because someone wants to prove somebody is black or not or white. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh,
That's
I
where I'm
personally, I see it more than just prove. I see this as a specific instance. I see this as a political instance. I see this as someone running for president who's opaque. You can't figure out who she is. And this brings up a lot of doubt. And people are looking at all sorts of things to try to figure her out. But that doesn't define everyone else. This is American politics has shifted, and the workplace has shifted to personality, cult of personalities.
Yeah.
And so it's no longer the people and who is black as far as politics and what the political interests are and what could be served on that end. It is who is running for president and who is black so that you can vote for them as a black person. So I don't even see this as a matter of genealogy. I see it as a political mechanism.
Using genealogy
Using
because using it and weaponizing it really, and if we're talking about how we got to this point, all of it I feel is that history is on a continuum. It doesn't stop. Everything is connected, right? Just like the caller who's came in earlier and the conversation we're having now, it's all interconnected. How our brothers and sisters on the mainland see those who are coming from the Caribbean, or all of these conversations I've had at nauseum. You understand what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is that as it relates to the information presented here, the hope is that we can, the people who are vested in it can have a little more of a level-headed approach to having real conversations without reinventing.
That would be hard because in America, if you are Black American, if like I can go back to the late 1700s, you're Black and you get treatment based on that. And so your politics are fixed. And so this exercise is and Candace is not wholly Black American. She is from the Virgin Islands.
She from the people's from the Virgin Islands. That's what I'm saying. I'm aware. I'm like, what in the world?
So I when I look at her, I say, okay, she's not seeing this totally from an American perspective either.
I spent a lot of time, even before researching and still researching Caribbean history, I started off researching American history.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And it's deep. So I totally understand. No, I wouldn't say totally, but I've invested a lot of time into trying to understand
Mm-hmm.
what you're communicating to me right now. You
Mm-hmm.
understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So to
Yeah.
see,
Well, Candace is a political figure.
I see, I know that part. Yeah, that part is true.
She's
That,
we don't have, as a matter of fact, the one person I follow who is a citizen, I consider I am a citizen and a customer here. And there's only one YouTuber I know who is a citizen, a Black American citizen. And he wrote on a political a topic, a current topic, as a citizen. He did a review of a video and he was struck and is getting sued.
hmm?
And his was a reaction of a more um, a supported, more commercial
So did
video.
he use the video,
He
like doing a
used the video,
reaction?
but the person
Yeah,
who did the video didn't strike him. The
someone
person
else
who
struck
was the
it.
subject of the video struck him. A huge figure, a huge political figure, and is suing him.
So did he give concrete information, or he was just giving a reaction, his
He
opinion?
just gave his reaction.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, this is what I mean by, I see that, yeah, I see this as a political exercise, but everything is a political exercise and everything is leaving out the citizen, and Kamala being opaque invites this.
It does it because you're not being straightforward and answering the questions that the people desire to know. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't get into all of that
Yeah, but
portion of the conversation. You know what I mean? But when I do see something that's just blatantly off, I'm like,
yeah.
come on, come on,
But
come
the
on.
other thing is that because that party is the party that we went through slavery with, that classified us as a race, that party's obsession with race and use of race invites it.
Yeah, this check out the book that I just gave everybody. If you have The Invention of White People and Its Relevance Today,
Oh yeah,
it speaks to what you're talking about. I know there are many other books, but it's a short read, but it does, for those who have no clue, like, what are y'all talking about? It's really a means of power and control, and that's what it has been, and that's what it continues to be. And it's just it's a level of awareness, I think, and a level of willingness to not just get factioned up. You know what I mean? Like, people just not thinking and not processing critically for themselves and just running headfirst into, yeah, that sounds good. I'm like, come on, man. You know, our time could be better spent in other ways. Let me just say it, in my humble opinion. But
well, we're in the middle of something that is really going to define our freedom going forward.
yeah.
It's that serious. If you think about the last 3 years, it really will.
Indeed, indeed. What are your thoughts? Kimberly says, as a Black American, how do we reconcile her family heritage as slavers? Is it more about her family heritage being in slavers, or is it about her being, basically a foreigner?
A foreigner?
Meaning, her people are not from America.
Yeah, just the same as Obama.
So so what I'm asking is, it's more about, it's because people, like, there are a lot of people whose families were enslavers. You understand what I'm saying? Is it about that, or is
No,
it
we
about,
don't think about it that way.
right? Yeah.
Because for me, and I think most people, I was raised by my great grandmother, born 1901. It's very close. I have that memory.
Right.
No matter what anybody says about slavery, I have the memory of slavery, of sharecropping, of the migration, of right up until now. I have all of that memory. But I think the thing is that we don't have representation. That's the issue. That any other Black person has as as inequitable as it can be. They have a government, they have a seat at the UN, they have representation, and we don't. And we are constantly used as an excuse or as a face for someone else's interests, someone else's gain. So it matters to us when someone stands there and says that they are Black with a Southern accent, which is impossible, and at the same time says, no, I'm not going to just write a law for Black people when they're writing laws for Chinese people and Latino people and gay people and everyone else specifically. That's a problem.
And if I may ask, I know I'm going. What do you think historically? I know what I think, but is that the crux of this matter? Why are other nationalities and people being empowered in this way? Yet,
because
Mhm.
it has it at Reconstruction, we actually had power. If you look at the political seats held by Blacks during Reconstruction, and that is what we had a degree of power. We had communities that we led, and it's always been a fight that we don't have that. America has always been looking for the most cheapest labor they can get. It has never strayed away from the free labor that it had during slavery. And in sharecropping, that was an adjustment. And immigration is an adjustment too.
So basically, what I'm hearing you saying, and ultimately, America has not changed the game plan.
Never. It's always the same. It's your perception of America. It's your image, the dream of America that attracts you. But the Democrats, they have always managed labor. They have always managed populations. If you look at the trends of immigration, they revolve around things like, I looked at when everybody says we were on welfare. Well, 17% of our population live in poverty now. That's not to say that we're not poor, it's to say that we have been the working poor. We have always been paid less. And we do have Black jobs. We have never risen above certain levels to get anywhere.
Hello, are you still there? It seems like your mic chipped out. I can hear you. Hello? Bay Hill, your mic is chipping out. Can anyone else hear?
Oh, wait, hold on. Oh, wait, 1 minute. Sorry. I turned on the video by mistake. No, so yeah, so we are on a treadmill. So I looked at that, and then I looked to see, okay, when they started TANF, which was the end of welfare, which put us back to work, we actually really worked hard at being the working poor. We did get jobs, we purchased homes, and our poverty went down. And then we had the 2008 crash, which was because there were investment tools that bet against home ownership. Not only that, but I looked at immigration. Immigration shut up the year before TANF took place. And living in a Black neighborhood, a middle-class Black neighborhood, working class Black neighborhood, I can say that I've seen consistent spurts, growth of immigration. Not only that, but somehow I wound up working in a nonprofit that focused on naturalizing immigrants throughout New York City. And I could see the switch from the welfare budget to the immigration budget very clearly. And it made me realize that the Democratic Party is in charge, or has, I should say, it has an ecosystem around social supports, welfare, and philanthropy, and supporting individual needs and inexpensive labor.
Do you think, based on all of what you're saying from the history of abolition, quote, I'm gonna put quotes, of slavery up until today, can the country afford to operate any other way?
You know what? I looked at a video today. I looked at the video about Springfield, and
Right.
then today two other videos about immigration populations. And the trend to that in all of those videos were that there was organized movement of those migrant populations into communities. And I found a video that got down to it, and it said that the mayor of Springfield invited this in,
Yeah, I saw that.
and that there was a recruiting or a relocation firm managing it and connecting immigrants
With
to
jobs.
the employers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this really makes me sure. It confirms my thought. So I thought about a video of the interview of that the Haitian young man, not in Springfield, but in the other location, and he was saying how they were operating. And I thought to myself, at first, my first thought is they're collecting votes, they're importing votes. And then my second thought is they're creating a micro economy. They're bypassing the larger failed economy. And they're creating a smaller economy of immigrants to satisfy industry need.
That's why I'm asking the question. Based on the history, the founding, America has been a corporation from
Yeah.
a business. Okay, great. So we know about business. Can America afford to operate any other way?
No, well, it's
Because
not a
if
matter of it's a matter of how you operate, because that's still not going to fix the issue. It's
no,
not going to
I'm not
fix the
saying that
debt.
it's fixing the issue because what's happening is that the first forced, they telling the young children now, uh, involuntary migration, but forced immigrants, enslaved peoples were the first set that after which time many more people came from different places for the same reason. After the initial
Well,
set,
there's still slaves, but
so what I'm saying is based on all of that, we're saying like at the end of the day, what are we saying?
we're saying that it's a lazy environment that doesn't want to produce. It wants others to produce, and it wants others to produce cheaply. It could succeed if it wasn't itself, and it actually kept its factories and kept its institutions and didn't try to do it on the cheap. If it actually believed in human uh in families and human communities that are organic and not loaded with cheap labor. That's my thought.
Mm. This has been a well-rounded conversation.
Huh?
It's well-rounded. If you look at what we're talking about, any business, you have to say what product or service do you produce? What, yeah, what do you make? Like you said, if you're not making cars and you're not making steel and you're not doing, what are you doing? What are you making? What are
You're
you
creating
importing?
wealth.
In what way? Yeah, that's what
You're
I'm saying.
creating wealth for a few,
Yeah.
and you're using the many. And that's not going to work.
Well, here we are, people. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
You
you.
know, yeah,
All right.
thank you. It is what it is, and here we are. Right.
Here
So here we are. I pray that everybody continues to do the inner work. I talk about that often. Sometimes we get overwhelmed by the things that is seemingly outside of our reach. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But then there are things that we can control, and the more we deal with the things that we can control, is the more that we can make progress in our own personal lives.
Right.
It's an extension. So because if somebody may leave this conversation and be like, well, then I guess there's nothing to do. You understand what I'm saying? And
No,
then
I
there
think
is
I
this
think we wrapped our mind around it pretty well. It's a matter of what you can think of.
yeah. I think so. But maybe I should better say, I hope no one leaves this with the conversation in that way. That there's
Yeah.
so much in our daily lives, of building community, building strong families, building these connections that are missing. We have all the opportunities to do so until we get to where it is that we are going. And one of those things is knowing where you're coming from. Eve says she wants to come on, but we have people tuning in from England, and I know it's late over there. I'm gonna wrap up because it's getting late over here too. I want to thank you guys for spending this time rocking out with me. What y'all trying to say? Y'all don't like when I do the Tyrese? Because everybody came in for this one. I don't mean to change the subject. Y'all didn't like the Tyrese conversation. I think his family lineage is very interesting, but I will be back to that after this one. So yeah, definitely. Thank everybody for tuning in. Mix. Y'all still arguing about the mixed race thing. Hopefully, y'all have some information that you could take back if you having these type of conversations, so that we don't pass misinformation along. Let me see here. For those who are all the way, we have people tuning in from New Zealand. Grown Up Jamaican says, start planting, producing your own food, becoming self sufficient. Yeah, stop worrying. I mean, back to Tyrese. Yeah, but, there's so many things that we can do in the here and now, and prayerfully, we leave from this conversation just knowing that there are things that we can do, and the rest, I guess, will take care of itself, maybe or maybe not. And I mean, so with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. It's time for some sleep, I know. And if I missed your comment, my apologies. Go ahead and drop it in the box below. And yeah, everybody have a blessed night. Wait a minute. Hold on there. Hold on there. Me never run no little commercial or nothing. Hold on there. Let me look a commercial there. While I'm running this commercial, I'll give it anybody who has one more thing to say. I like the way the conversation rounded up. Island Twist follows Jackie Brown, a young girl who finds herself head over heels for the new island boy at school in fresh outer yard, and Jackie has the fever. But as she navigates the ups and downs of her new crush, things quickly spiral out of control when her not so secret admirer becomes determined to sabotage her relationship. So check out the new novel Island Twist over on Amazon today. Now back to the story. Everybody, I don't see anybody else coming up, so I pray everybody have a blessed night. Be encouraged. Walk good.